Hi, I'm Dylighted, and today I'm going to be playing in a small stakes cash tournament where the competition is much harder than a normal tournament. The reason why it's a lot harder because more serious tournament players enter these cash tournaments. I was looking through the tournament list and I recognized a lot of Dylighted viewers and a lot of top 100 players, so this is a tough field. I'm also going undercover using the tag TheRoadClown so I can go ahead and avoid all the reputation blockers and so I won't get gang robbed. If you want to go ahead and play in some cash tournaments like these, then I highly recommend you play in Colonist.io. Colonist.io basically run all the online Catan tournaments. So if you want to go ahead and play in a tournament, then I highly recommend you go on Colonist.io. All you have to do is type in Colonist.io in your browser and click play, and you're right in. It's super easy to find a game, and it's great practice so you can beat your own friends and crush these tournaments yourself. Thank you so much Colonist.io for sponsoring this video, and for providing a community a place to play online tournaments. We thank you for that.
Yeah, so I'm Hawkeye, so you might recognize me from a few of Dylighted's other videos. We played quite a few games together. Been playing competitive Catan for about 2 years now. Been playing in regional qualifiers, actually qualified for nationals for the third year in a row now. So looking forward to getting back there. Dylighted's actually the one that kind of got me into playing the online competitive scene though, which I think is helped make me a lot better player. Just playing games with him and other good players online. Yeah, definitely looking forward to watching this tournament game and see how you do here.
All right, thank you so much, Hawkeye. Let's go ahead and look at the board. Or what spots look attractive to you?
I mean, the 8-4-3 definitely looks good. With all that ore kind of being bunched together like that. If you pass on the ore with your first placement, I mean, you're probably not going to get any since it's kind of all right there in the same spot. Even though the 3 wheat's not that great, there's a lot of, the 3, 10, 11 are kind of there in the middle. So you might be able to get a second wheat number. So I think getting on even though it's only a 3 wheat, I think that's an important spot. And then you hopefully get on maybe the 10 or 11 to get a second wheat number. And, the ore should be good trading material since there's, likely someone is going to be playing without ore.
Yep, exactly. Those are my thoughts too. I was very ecstatic that the 3-4-8 was left open for me, especially since I can point towards the coast and there's 2 3-1 port options. I saw myself getting a potential wheat sheep option, or just getting even more wheats, and with the pairing up with the 3-4-8. So I was very happy that the 3-4-8 was left open for me. Do you have any other considerations for besides the 3-4-8 of where second position should go?
The brick spots are definitely good. I mean, there's so much wood on this board. And there's really only 2 good brick spots, the 8-4-3 and the 6-9-3. So those are definitely good spots as well. I mean, the 6-9-3, you have the brick port right there, which would be an excellent port. And then there's a very strong chance you'd get a spot on that 6 wood. You'd have the coordinated roads with the 6. So I think the 6-9-3 is definitely a good spot too. But, I mean, obviously ore wheat sheep is definitely a great strategy. I think it's hard to pass up on the ore, especially with that 3-1 port right there. Yeah,
for sure. Blue goes ahead and take the 6-9-3, and I think that's a very strong option for third, especially since, like you said, you have the brick port, and there's a strong chance you're going to be getting on strong wood to pair up with it. And you also have the coordinated 6s, which is really nice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's pretty much a guarantee you'll get the 6 wood. So there's only 2 placements after you, and fourth isn't going to place 2 settlements on that 6 wood. So there's going to be one there for you for sure.
Mm-hmm. And this is a really tough spot for 4th position. What do you think about the 9, 10, 11 and the 8, 10 placements together, where you go full ore wheat sheep?
Yeah, I mean, ore wheat sheep's definitely a strong setup. The thing you want to avoid with ore wheat sheep is you want to make sure you have expansion spots. And there's a very good chance that you won't if you take that setup. I mean, they'll be racing you for the 3-1 port. If they take the 9-10-11, they'll probably have to point to the 3-10. There's a good chance that whoever goes an 8-4-3 can take that spot from them. And I mean that's how you lose. That's how you guarantee yourself a loss, is if you have nowhere to expand. Like if you look at your spot, you have you have an ore wheat sheep setup, but you have spots to expand to. And if you lose the 1-3-1 port, you still have another option. Whereas if you take the 9, 10, 11, 8, 10, you just get completely cut off. And I think it's a mistake that you see a lot of people make. They really want to do the ore wheat sheep setup. So they'll place an ore wheat sheep and they'll place on like a coastal spot like that with like nowhere to build to. And then you basically need like 4 VPs to be able to win. unless you can pull like a year plenty really early or something. So I think this is a setup where you want to look at what you can expand to if you have expansion spots, and there really isn't any with that setup. So I would definitely not do the all or weak sheep, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the 8, 10, 9, 10, 11 setup, that's a big trap setup right there. And I was hoping that you'd say what you said right there. So thank you for the wise words. Now it's me coming back to me in the second position. Let's talk about our options over here. We can either do the 2, 5, 10, 2, 9, 10, or the 6, 5, 12. Or also the 6, 4, 11 too.
Yeah, I don't know if I like 6, 4, 11. I guess you do have the OR port there. 6, 5, 12 gives you pretty good production. It gives you all the OR wheat cheap resources. The thing I don't like about it is you only have that 3 wheat. I think especially since you decided to take all that ore. I mean, that ore is basically going to be useless unless you have a lot of wheat to go with it. So I think you take your first placement in consideration. You definitely need more wheat to go with that ore to make good use of it. So I think going on the 10 wheat is definitely the way to go. Because this is a really low wheat board, and then you actually have a pretty decent wheat setup with the 10 and 11. Definitely hard to block. So your options are 5, 10, 2, 9, 10, 2. The 9, 10, 2, is definitely tempting because you want all the OR wheat sheep. I kind of like the 5, 10, 2 here. Yeah, I see you placed on 9, 10, 2.
So yeah, I think me placing on 2, 9, 10 was actually a huge mistake. And the reason why I think it was a huge mistake was because if I can go on the 2, 5, 10, then I can prevent black from getting on a very, very attractive wheat spot, which is the 5, 10. And if you look up there, that's actually the wood port. And if I decide to go on the 2, 5, 10, which takes away black settlement spot on the 5, 10, you have to look at where black can go now. And I think a lot of the times black either chooses something like the 6, 4, 11 just for the strong production, and they're going wood, sheep, and ore, and it's a really, really awkward resource income, or they either take blue's 6, 2 brick port, and both of those results have black damaging another player, while at the very, very small cost that I don't be getting sheep. And with the 2, 5, 10, I do have the free route, and I'm able to expand to the wood port. So in this spot, I think I just sort of ran out of time and panicked and chose an option, the 2, 9, 10. But I think that was definitely a mistake. And had I had more time, I think I would have saw like the more benefits of placing potentially on the 2, 5, 10. So I think this 2, 9, 10 was a huge mistake because it allows black to place on the 5, 10, which is a great spot for black. So I agree with you on the 2, 5, 10 is much, much better. Yeah,
and I see the concern with not being on sheep. But, sheep's obviously, one of the easiest resources to trade for. And, once you get to that wood port, you're going to be porting that wood. You don't have any brick to go with it. So you essentially have that 5 sheep once you get on the wood port. It essentially turns into a 5 sheep. And then, black really has 0 options if you take that 5, 10, 2. He just has all wood, sheep, and ore, and he really can't do anything.
Yeah, well said.
But I think one more thing to consider is you see a resource where there's a lot of good numbers like that. Like you see the wood, 6, 9, 5, 4, like all great numbers. You're going to be so much wood in the game. Even more if you take in the 5, 10, 2, because black would have been placing on the 6 and 4 probably. And then you're right by the wood port, and I know you can't. It's not really something to count on to I'm just going to pull a monopoly. But if you get on the best port in the game and you do get that monopoly, that just wins you the game right there. If you're able to get on the wood port and you can monopolize wood, that just that completely wins you the game, I guess. So I think that's something to consider. Obviously you can't just count on getting a monopoly. But when you have a setup like you do where you're going to be buying dev cards, there's a decent chance, you'll pull that monopoly, and then it's just so powerful if you're on that wood port and there's so much wood out there.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to consider as well.
I agree with you. I think this is a great board for Monopoly, and that placing the 2, 5, 10 and getting on the wood port, it also sets me up really, really well for Monopoly. So black rolled a 7 on their turn, and I remember the table talk. They were wanting a brick, and since I started out with a brick, I just told him like, hey, just go ahead and block blue, and I'll trade you the brick since blue's in a strong spot with the coordinated roads. Would you have done that, the bribery trade, to not get robbed?
That's a tough call. I mean, especially since brick's so rare for you.
Yes, it was very rare.
But also you don't have wood. So, I mean, the brick doesn't do you any good, but wood is pretty plentiful in the spores. You might be able to trade it. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough call. I think that's a scenario where you can afford to get robbed. I mean, the times where I definitely give into that trade is if you have, I mean, a bunch of cards that you definitely don't want to lose. You're definitely willing to make the trade. I mean, I guess it was good to, keep the robber off your ore spots, to be able to, get that city faster. I guess, getting a city is probably more important than expanding at this point. So I think, even though the brick's rare, I think, trading away, if you know he's going to steal from you, I think is a good move.
Yeah. In my opinion, I think a lot of times just going ahead and trading away the resource that they're looking for to not get robbed is really, really worth it. As rather than just straight up losing a card, you're just swapping your card out. So it's instead of like a -1, all it is just like a minus like 0.5 in terms of like card value, depending on what you swap out.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're not getting blocked too. And the robber can make a huge swing in the game if he blocks your 8 ore, and it makes it a lot harder for you to get a city. Instead, they block blue's good brick spot and keep them from expanding. So that definitely makes a big difference.
So yeah, right there, I was at 6 cards, and I had several wheats, and 1 ore, and 1 sheep. Would you have bought a development card in that spot, or would you have held for the city, and why?
That's a tough call. So I mean, there's obviously a lot of people like doing the very cheap game, and I see a lot of people just buying dev cards wherever they can. I prefer to hold for city if possible, especially with that strong 8-4-3. I mean, once you're just getting 2 ore on each of those rolls, it's just going to be so much harder to block you, and you'll be able to buy so many more dev cards. But you did have 6 cards. I think that's kind of the cutoff is, the 7 in the early game is just, it can really kill you. Towards the end of the game, when you have all these cities out there, you're producing a lot. The 7 still hurts, but you get those resources back pretty quickly. But when you only have 2 settlements on the board and you're not really producing that much, a 7 can just really destroy you at the beginning of the game. So I think 6 cards is kind of the limit. Like if you only had 5, since you're not doubled up on any numbers, I'd probably hold for the city, but I think 6. Also taking into account that you have plenty of ore. That's another thing is it's hard to say for a city sometimes, when you're spending your ore on dev cards, but you have so much ore that you can get it back. So I think it's unfortunate you got the VP, but I think buying a dev card is the right choice for sure with 6 cards in your hand. Thank
you. I also thought it was the right choice. I thought it always hurts buying a dev card and not holding for the city, especially since the city is so impactful for my game. So I decided to steal from black, and that's because I knew they had a high chance for wood. Also because I think black is in a very strong position, and I'm fighting them for dev cards. So I'm able to pluck their wood. But what do you think about the block?
I think it makes sense. I think the 10 ore, is obviously just by the block. We had to move it off of there is the problem. You can't, when people have 1 wheat spot, I like to block their 1 wheat, but you share it with them, so you can't do that. And since he has 2 wood spots, I think it makes sense to block his only sheep. Makes it harder for him to get that settlement on the wood port, which will help him a lot. But yeah, it's definitely this situation right here. I usually prefer to block, the really good. A lot of people like to pull for those cards at the beginning of the game with the robber. I definitely prefer blocking like the most impactful spot over drawing for a card. But looking at this board, I don't really see anyone that's super dangerous, or there's no super good spot to block. So I think I definitely if he's got the wood and he's only got 2 cards, that wood really helps you out a lot. So I really like pulling for that wood.
Thank you. So blue's able to expand on the 6-4-11 spot, and I think that's an absolute monster spot. And then I think that puts them in a great position, since blue essentially building on the 6-4-11, that's basically a city in itself, because that's an increase in 10 points of production. And their next spot they're probably going to expand to is at 6-2, so they're going to be getting 2 roads for every single 6, which makes them a road machine, which is pretty scary, and if you think about it. since they basically got a city and all of us have gotten, they basically got 10 points of production, while none of us have done anything. I was able to buy 1 dev card, but that's about it.
Yeah, and I mean, he's got so much room on the right side of the board there. I mean, the 6-5-12's open. He's got the 3-1 down there on the 9-12. And when he gets to the 6-2, he gets 2 roads on every 6. So yeah, he's definitely a scary spot. And I mean, yeah, that settlement spot's actually really huge. I mean, like no matter what, people just see a city and they value a city a lot more than a settlement. But if you look at this board, I mean, the settlement is on a 10-point production spot. I mean, that's basically the highest producing spot on the board besides that 9-5-10. So it's essentially just as good as getting a city. Actually better, since you're, diversifying your numbers and spreading out. So it's actually a really good settlement spot. Yeah, I think people see cities and kind of freak out, just thinking cities are like super strong. But a lot of times they don't consider that. I mean, sometimes settlement expansion spots are just as strong as the city. If it's like a high producing spot like that 6-4-11.
For sure. So in this spot, I decided to actually hold for the city. Since I was at 6 cards, the very, very same scenario. Would you have held for the city in that spot, or would you have bought a dev card? Since this time I decided to hold for the city.
I mean, I think I'd go by the same logic. I mean, since you bought the dev card with 6 last time, I think I would do it again. So yeah, you had 4 wheat, a sheep, and an ore. I think I probably would buy the dev card just because, I mean, you get ore pretty quickly. And then once you have the knight, you can start saving for city once you get that knight in your hand. And hopefully able to keep blocking blue. It's definitely a tough call, though. I mean, I think you can definitely afford. I think you also have to consider, what am I throwing away if I roll 7? If you have to throw away a bunch of wheat and sheep, I think that's fine. So there's a little more incentive to hold, since you don't have these rare valuable cards you're holding on to. Yeah, I guess, I mean, since you bought a dev card with 6 cards last time, I think. I might do the same thing again.
Yeah, so at first, that's what my approach was to that situation, that I should probably be holding, I should probably be buying a dev card because I don't want to be 7'd out, especially since it's the 6 card limit that you're talking about. But I think what changed my decision was, first of all, that since blue, now they expanded a lot, if I go ahead and upgrade to the city, it's not that I'm not as big of a target anymore, since it's usually people who get the first city that just gets gang robbed over and over again. So I thought, first of all, blue going ahead and expanding that amazing 6-4-11 spot almost gave me a little bit more of a green light to go ahead and hold. I also knew that there was a good amount of ores out there. They would probably be very, very tight on trading their ores. I think that getting that first victory point, it puts me really, really behind, since getting early victory point, it's a very, very passive card. And if I already spent sort of the three cards, an ore, wheat, sheep, on sort of nothing, since the victory point does nothing at the moment, and then it puts me even further behind in terms of production, since the knight, it's sort of like an investment in production, since I can always defend myself with it. But because I thought, I'm like, okay, so someone's already ahead in production by 10 points through the 6-4-11 spot, and I'm also behind because I got a useless spot through a useless dev card. Victory point's not useless, but it's inactionable at the moment. Then I need to start holding for the city just so I can get myself back inside the production game.
Yeah, and I think one more thing to consider is you want to look at how valuable is the knight at this point. Like, so a lot of times when you have a good ore with cheap setup, I mean, you might be on one good ore number, or like you might be on like an 8 ore or an 8 wheat, and you're sharing with someone else, and it's your only ore wheat spot, and it's blocked all the time. I mean, a knight is a lot more valuable in that situation because you're going to get blocked on a really key spot, and you want to move the robber off you. But I think in this scenario, I mean, blue appears to be the leader. Everyone seems to recognize that. Blue's getting blocked, so the robber's going to go back and forth between their 6s, most likely. No one's going to block your good ore spot, probably, since you're on it alone. You're not sharing with the leader. So I think a knight is just less valuable in this scenario compared to, depending on different board states. I mean, knights definitely have different values, which I think is something to consider. And yeah, you're right. In this case, a knight is not quite as valuable since blue's the one that's going to be blocked a lot. So yeah, if you buy a dev card in tonight, there's a chance it just sits in your hand for a really long time. So yeah, I think I definitely make sense holding for the city there.
Thank you. Now, quite a few 10s have rolled, and now I'm very, very terrified of black since once they upgrade the 5, 9, 10, it's a massive increase in production, and it goes very, very well with the wood port. So there are 9 cards right now, and right now if you roll a 7 and at 9 cards and you have a perfect city in hand, that means you dump 4 cards if you roll a 7, and basically you're able to keep a perfect city. So there's a big, so the difference between 9 cards and 8 cards with the city is that if you roll a 7 with 8 cards, that you don't get a city, since you have to discard 4 of it and you only get to keep 4. So you only get 4/5 of the city, which is not a complete city. But right now, black, they have a city in hand, which is really, really strong for them, since the 5, 9, 10 is an amazing upgrade.
When you get the wood pour, I mean, so I like setups like that where his settlement spot doubles the 5 wood, and then his city doubles the 9 wood. So I mean, it's hard to block because rather a lot of times you see a good wood port and they just have all of it on one good number, but he's spread out on the 5 and the 9. So doubling on the 5 with his settlement, doubling on the 9 of the city makes them really hard to block, especially with those 10s as well, the coordinated 10s.
Yeah. And Black was saying in this game that it's sort of a feast or famine situation with them. With a setup like this, where you're only on a few numbers, the feast or famine thing, it matters a lot less if you can capitalize off your feast. Since, let's say if 10 does hit and Black does upgrade, they're able to really capitalize off that feast very, very much. Since they have a wood port, they have coordinated 10s, and they're able to use, like, when they get the massive influx of cards, they're able to use it. So even though people might argue that this is a very high variance setup, I still disagree that yes, it is high variance, but you're able to capitalize when you do get your cards, which decreases the variance, essentially, if that makes sense.
I think that's, it's obviously hard to win every game of Catan, and I think a lot of the times, if you lose a game, I'm not sure how good of a player Black is. I'm not familiar with him. But if you lose to someone who's, maybe not as skilled, you might look at the dice stats after the game and you'll see that, 10s rolled a ton and they're on 2 10s. So I think blocking that 10 right there, that makes sense. I mean, that's how you lose the game, is if 10 rolls a bunch and he's on both 10s. That's like a huge difference maker. So I think when there's coordinated numbers like that, being able to block one and kind of limit the damage when a 10 rolls, I think that's really important.
Thank you, yeah. And is able to steal a wheat from Black, which is really, really good, since I think that the wheat's like one of their critical crutches inside the setup, because since like that's their weakest part of the setup, that they only have 3 points of wheat. So me being able to take a wheat from them hurt them a lot, since it's sort of taking a, like, how I like to look at it is, since I'm taking away a wheat and they don't have that much wheat, I'm delaying their settlement, or I'm delaying a dev card, and that's really, really strong. So I'm very, very grateful that I was able to steal a wheat from them in that spot.
Yeah, I mean, Blue kind of seemed like the bigger threat with that early expansion, but Black getting the city on the 5 and the 10 was definitely huge, and now is the wood port, and it seems like it's going to be really hard to block.
Yep. And now Black went ahead and built on the wood port, and they have a city, and they have a settlement on the port. And this is where I'm terrified that I'm going to start falling behind, especially since my first dev card was a victory point. Now Black has a port, and they're able to go ahead and start like mass buying D cards and outproduce me in terms of largest army. And if they're able to do that, then it's going to be very, very, very difficult for me to win. So looking at this spot inside the game, I'm not very confident in my setup at the moment, or not very confident in my position, since Black has a much stronger position, and it makes me just more incentivized to be blocking Black.
Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, at this point, everyone's recognizing how strong the threat Black is, which leaves all your ore open. She'll be getting a lot of ore. Your 10 we might be blocked. We still have the 3, so hopefully he's getting robbed a lot. And since he does have that feast or famine set up, I mean, if 10s or 5s are rolling, he's just going to get a ton of cards and be able to buy development cards. If you go a few orbits without 10s or 5s, I mean, it might give him a chance to slow down. And obviously you have 2 dev cards in your hand right now. So that might give you a chance to kind of jump ahead on army if you're able to pull some knights and block his ore and steal from him a few times.
Yeah. So, theoretical question. Let's say I did have a third ore in hand as 7 cards, and would you buy 2 dev cards here, or would you just go ahead and buy a city?
I think I would buy 2 dev cards. I think on like the dev card versus city debate, I think if you can only get 1 dev card, like if you only had 1 sheep in your hand, it makes more sense to get a city. Since you don't know, I mean, you might pull another useless VP. But I think when you can buy 2 dev cards, you can, especially since Black's can be, I mean, if you look at his setup now, like he's just going to be buying a ton of dev cards. You need knights to A, be able to block him, and B, to, keep him from getting those 2 points for largest army. So I think I would definitely buy the dev cards in this scenario.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just a theoretical question. I don't actually have a third ore for a city.
Yep. And another thing to consider is how easy is it for you to get a city? With your city on that 8 and the 4 ore, like you're getting so much ore that your next city comes really quickly, so you can dump your hand for dev cards and still get that second city pretty quickly. If your city wasn't on such a good spot with like the ore and wheat there, it is going to be really hard to get that second city. It might make more sense to get a city, but I mean, with your production right now, second city should come easily. So I think you buy the dev cards. You can count on getting some rolls to get that second city later.
Yeah, so I decided to buy 2 D cards since that's the only thing I had on my turn, and I got a victory point and a road bidding. What do you think about those cards, and how does that affect my situation?
Well, now I think you should have just got a city. Yeah, that's not good. I mean, the VP is obviously good. Like if you are able to get army, the VP is going to be really useful and help you win the game. The road building is completely useless. Since you have the 2 VPs already, you've already built a road to your settlement spot. I mean, essentially your 10 points are going to come from settling on that 3-1 port, getting 3 cities, an army, and then you have your 2 VPs already. So the road building, you could use it to cut off Black to the 8-10, but I mean, it doesn't seem likely based on the resources you're getting. No wood, only the 2 brick, so it's unlikely. But if it did have that scenario, you could, maybe cut off Black, and that's probably your only way to get some good use out of the road building.
Yes, actually, I was planning to do that, but I was planning to try and cut off Black to the 8-10 if possible. But I knew that I needed the wood brick, wheat in the spot, and able to do so. So I thought, if I was able to do it, then that'd be nice. But I was also doubtful that I'd be able to get it in the first place. But yes, that is something that definitely came upon my mind. So right here, I rolled a 7. Where would you block and why?
I think I blocked the 10. The 10 ore, just because, like I said, that's coordinated 10s. I mean, if the 10 gets really hot, you can just lose the game just from 10 drilling a few times. Whereas the 10 ores blocked, it limits the damage. I mean, obviously, it's kind of the same for 5. If 5 rolls a bunch, he gets sheep for dev cards, he gets wood to port, but not quite as dangerous. Just getting sheep and wood in his hand. And then also, so you want to, when you're fighting for dev cards like that, you want to block, I think you want to block the spot that keeps him from buying the most dev cards. Whereas the 5, essentially, he gets the port for 1 card, where the 10 gives him 2 ore that he can use for 2 dev cards. I kind of like blocking the spot that helps him get 2 dev cards rather than the 5, which he can only port for 1. So I think the 5 is definitely a good spot. Not really wrong to block it. I think I just would have blocked the 10 ore probably.
No, yeah. After you explain your reasoning, I think that I'm more incentivized in the future. If I was to replay this game, I'd probably block the 10 ore. So thank you for that.
You might have also been considering that he's going to build a 3-1 port, and the wood helps him port for brick maybe. Also, and you're trying to keep him from building on the 3-1 port. Maybe that was a consideration.
Yeah, I mean, you could also argue one more time at the same time that since it's Black's turn and that and when it was my turn, I was blocking them. They still had quite a few cards in their hand, So by blocking a 10 ore, if they didn't have a knight and they built on the 3-1 port, then I'd be blocking an additional 3 points of protection. In addition to just to his 3 points on the 10 ore.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so black builds on 3-1 port. The bad news is they have more ore and they have a 3-1 port that they can, port sheep for. The good news is that they spent resources not getting dev cards. You obviously have at least a dev card in your hand, maybe 2 if you can get a trade for wheat. So that maybe gives you, and black doesn't have any dev cards, only has 2 cards. So him building the settlement is obviously good for him, but it gives you a chance to, catch up in the army race.
Yes, I think I'm sort of forced to buy dev card in the spot. I don't really have another option.
And you got another non-knight. So it seems like you're going to have a tough road here getting army.
Since black now is way, way up in terms of production, and they have now they have a 3-1 port, and that's an additional added piece of flexibility to their game. And it makes me way, way more incentivized to be blocking their 10 ore in the future. Especially since I have 0 knights and they have 1 knight. Even though I do have 4 dev cards down, I still have literally 0 knights, and this is not a very, very good sequencing of the dev cards that I'm getting, since I need to be buying knights in this spot, not just to be defending myself, but also to be blocking black since I have positioning on him, but also to make sure that black doesn't get largest army, to deny him points. Since if black can get largest army, I think this game gets way, way easier for black and way, way harder for me, since we are racing for that win condition. Yeah,
for sure. So then, I think you want to start thinking about how you want to use that year of plenty. Obviously, you basically have 3 considerations. You can use it for the rare wood and brick to get the settlement on the 3-1 port, and hopefully start porting your ore. You could use it for a second city, or you could use it for 2 dev cards. I think, like you said, you really need knights. Your 3 wheat is blocked with a city on it. You have a bunch of ore and sheep in hand. So I think I would probably use it to get 2 dev cards, because those knights are going to be really important, I think.
Yeah, and I think that a common trap that a lot of people would do would actually be just to go ahead and upgrade the city because they're behind. But I think that's a very, very common trap because there's a little birdie said before that whenever you're behind, you want to go ahead and upgrade, but whenever you're ahead, you want to buy D cards. But I think this is one of the many exceptions to that rule where since I don't have any knights, and if I do go ahead and upgrade, then I fall too quickly behind in the army race, and I just straight up lose my win condition. And I think that pressure is added on, especially since black just bought another D card. So if black has a knight now, then they are 2 knights up on me, and I am 2 knights behind. And even if I do upgrade, sure, that puts me at 4 points with 2 cities. The thing is, black with their positioning right now, all I'm doing is tying black in terms of production. Right now, I just have to be full on investing in D cards in order to stand a chance in terms of army. And like I said, knights are extra important, especially in my spot, since I have positioning on black and I can directly block black. Reshi right here inside the chat, he says not a single knight red. And that's a good indication that since this robber has been sitting on my 3 wheat, and it is a critical spot, although some might say that like you do have the 10 wheat open. I think most of the time if I did have a knight, I would be playing it here, unless I had another development card I wanted to be playing. So yes, the robber being on my 3 wheat and me not moving it is a very, very big indication that none of my cards are knights, which hurts my position a lot actually. And I think some people would be very ecstatic by having victory points, but having victory points early is not a good thing since it's too passive of a card.
Yeah, and then they kind of get scared knowing that you have 4 development cards and are knights. They start worrying about you have VPs and monopolies, and they start, even though you're showing 3 points on the board, I mean, they worry about you just having all those dev cards. So it looks like you use your plenty for 2 wheat, buy 2 dev cards, I'm guessing.
Yes, I don't think I have a choice, because if I don't buy dev cards, black just sort of kills me inside the army race, and that just sort of like puts me in a very, very tough spot. So finally, I'm able to buy 2 knights, and that helps my spot tremendously. Finally.
Yeah, I think you're plenty. That's one of those cards that, I mean, it really easily gets misplayed. I mean, like you said, it almost seems obvious. I'll just use 2 wheat and get a city, right? And I think a lot of times it's just a card that gets misplayed very frequently. So I think that's definitely good in your scenario to recognize I really need the knights. I really don't like using your plenty just to get like one development card. It's almost like a complete waste. But if you're able to use it to get two like you did, I think it's definitely beneficial. And then, you hope Black doesn't have a knight. Or even if he does, you hope, if his 5 or 10 doesn't roll, then he might not be able to buy another one, and you'd be able to hopefully take over, get army.
Yeah, for sure. So green over here, they're at 9 cards with they're at 9 cards. What do you think their chances are to win this game?
So they don't have any dev cards, so they don't have a VP or Monopoly or anything. They're not going to get army based on you and Black buying all the dev cards, so they need road, and that just seems really hard to do if you look at blue 6s. Just getting 2 roads and an extra brick on every 6. So they take road here with 6. So they did jump up to 7 points pretty quickly. But if you look at their production, it's really not that good. They don't have they have 2 ports, 3 ports actually, but none of them are useful. It's really a brick port or a 3-1 port they would need. The ore sheep and wheat port aren't really helpful. So it's really gonna be hard for them to get a city. I think they need a city, and then another city or settlement, and then a 10th point somewhere. I think it's gonna be really hard, especially with blues gonna be able to fight for road. So I think they have the points lead, but I think it's gonna be hard for them to finish it off.
Yeah, very well said. I've got my 3s blocked quite a lot now, and this is really, really unfortunate since I need every single little bit of wheats that I could get. But finally, it's my turn, and I'm able to move it off my spot, and I'm able to go ahead and block Black now in the 10 ore, since they have the 3-1 port, and they're getting 3 ores, which is very, very, very strong, and I have to deny that.
Yeah, and I think, so now that you have the knights, and you're going to be blocking Black, I think you want to start paying really close attention to what they're rolling and what's in their hand. Because if they did roll a 10, and they aren't going to be able to spend all that ore, I wouldn't think, so they have a couple ore in hand. So blocking the 10 is not quite as effective. Then you might want to block the sheep. The sheep doesn't seem that good, but that does help them. That's one of those rolls that helps them buy multiple development cards. So I'm sure you were paying attention and know that they didn't have any ore in their hand. 10 hadn't rolled. But yeah, you definitely want to start paying attention to what Black has in their hand. Because I think that definitely leads to making effective blocks. Like, I see that mistake a lot. If someone rolls a number and then a 7 gets rolled and they just move it right out of that spot, they don't really need that resource anymore. So I think it's important to pay attention. So if that 10 does roll, you're not just throwing it on the ore and that you're blocking either sheep or one of their wood spots. But if you know they don't have an ore in their hand, that 10 is definitely probably the number 1 spot to block.
Yeah. So I have a question. So if I was able to get an ore for wheat trade, would you go ahead and buy a city here, or would you go ahead and buy 2 dev cards?
It's tough. A lot of times I like getting a city if you already have a knight in your hand. And in this case, you have another road building actually. So you have, I guess you just bought the road building. So you had 2 playable development cards. So a lot of times in that case, I'm more inclined to get a city. Since if you get 2 more knights or something, you can't use all of those at once. But I think it might be worth it to go ahead and get multiple dev cards if you can, just because you don't have enough in your hand right now to take army. You are going to need more knights. So I think and then if you get that city, you start looking dangerous. Your 10 wheat's going to get blocked, and then it might make it harder to buy dev cards in the future. So I think it makes sense just to go ahead and get more dev cards now. And like I said earlier, it's not hard for you to get a city. You just need a couple rolls. You have a ton of ore. So I think, I would have gotten 2 dev cards if you could have gotten that trade over getting a city.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you. But I got a road bidding instead, which really hurt my spot. And the road bidding is virtually useless since I already have one, and I already have a spot to expand to. So it's basically like 3 cards down the drain again.
Yeah, this game, this is definitely an example of why it's important to, buy a lot of dev cards. I think a lot of players make the assumption that they're just going to pull a knight every time. And if they don't, they think that that's really unlucky. You know, they got a road building. But the fact is, I mean, there's 11 cards in that deck that aren't knights, and there's a good chance you're not going to get knights. So this is definitely a good example of you're buying a ton of dev cards. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get army. So I think it just stresses the importance of when you're able to buy multiple development cards to be able to do it, because you don't know what you're going to get, and it can definitely impact your game. And rather than getting the city and then falling behind in the army race, I think it's definitely important to make sure you keep drawing cards and make sure you get those knights, especially since you've been getting unlucky and haven't been pulling them.
Yeah, so there's a spot in where it was on green's turn where I traded my sheep away for 2 woods. What do you think about that trade? And I was trading away a dev card in that spot for 2 woods.
I think I like it just because you're going to need the wood for settlements. You're able to get 2 settlements as you have that road building too. So that way, if you roll, once you get on that 3/1 port, you're able to port or for a brick if you don't roll a 2 and get another settlement. So yeah, I like it just because you're gonna need a settlement at some point, right? So I think getting the wood makes sense. You do have a knight already, so it's not totally essential that you buy a dev card right now. So yeah, it's definitely a tough call. I mean, and then I think you take into consideration that black, rolled his 10, got a bunch of cards.
Yeah.
So maybe you do buy a dev card, and just because if you look at all the wood on this board, you're gonna be able to get wood. It's not like you needed to get it that turn. Essentially, you can't do anything with it yet. Blue and green are still gonna have a lot of wood to trade. You're gonna be stealing from black. They're gonna be having a lot of wood in their hand. So I might have bought a dev card just because black had so many cards in their hand. Rolled the 10, which is crucial to them buying dev cards. And since you only have 2 knights right now, I think I might have just preferred to get the dev card. Unfortunately, black did roll 7 and lost half their hand.
I think I remember what happened on this turn. I think green was trying to extort me, if I recall correctly, and they wanted a wheat really badly, and they're offering 2 woods. In this game, there's quite a few extortion moves that were going on, like trade me, otherwise I'm going to rob you. And I think that this was one of the scenarios actually where they wanted a wheat really badly, and they're willing to give me woods, since the woods aren't that useful for me, especially since I already have 2 in hand. But not just that, is that I'm able to get at least 4 for 1 of my woods, since getting 2 woods is nice in that sense. Because I can still 4 for 1 at 4 dev card at the worst. And I'm also okay with doing this trade, since I don't think that green can necessarily go ahead and do anything with this wheat.
Yeah, I think I probably wouldn't have done that trade just because I think you want to hold on to the wood. You have 2 wood, which will help you get 2 settlements. So it's like almost the perfect amount of wood in your hand. But yeah, like you said, if they're threatening you, saying that you have to do that trade or they're going to rob you, then it might make some sense. I might have also thrown in the condition to make them block black. It's kind of tough. Because green needs road to win. So it's like you're blocking black because they're fighting you for army, where green is they're going to be blocking blue because they're fighting for road. So even though black probably is the scariest position, since green really needs road to win, unfortunately they're going to be blocking blue a lot, and that's going to hurt you a little bit.
Yeah. And black goes ahead and blocks the 4, and they go ahead and upgrade the 5/10. What do you think about that move, by the way?
I guess I'm really not sure about the 4 wood block. Doesn't seem that great. So he stole from blue, it looks like. Blue's definitely scary because once they take road, they're going to be at 8. But if you're worried about blue, the 4 wood it's not really an impactful block on blue. So I don't know. I'd probably steal from you, since you're the one that's gonna, fighting for army. You have 4 dev cards, or if you are set on blocking blue, I would probably block the 6 wood instead of the 4. Because like I said, those coordinated numbers. 3 roads on every 6. That's just massive. Just think of the implications. If 6 is a common number. If 2 6s were to roll in a row, they get 6 roads in their hand. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. I think that in that spot, actually, I think black was trying to extort me also. And but this is like extortion move like gone wrong. And I wasn't sure like what black was wanting. Also, black had 0 cards, so I can't really offer them anything. I remember that like there's a miscommunication inside this game though, but I think that's partly why Black blocked the 4 wood. But that's the biggest reason why Black didn't steal from put it on any spots where I was on at least. But if anything, yeah, I'm not sure. I think blocking the 6 wood would be a lot better than just the 4 wood, since I think that Blue has a much better shot at getting longest road.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure they're thinking about Green being the points leader, but I think you want to think about long-term potential over just who has the most points. And the Green,
sure.
I mean, the forest doesn't really hurt either of them that much. And as you can see, you are really bad at buying night cards. Another VP.
And me not getting another knight was actually very, very, very critical. If Black had decided to go ahead and buy dev cards instead of getting a city, if they were able to pull a knight, that would put me in a very, very tough spot, since now I have essentially I have 4 useless dev cards that are sitting in my hand. While the victory points are technically not useless, the passive cards that don't do anything. This 5 rolling is very, very bad, since if Black buys a single D card, they're going to be taking away my win condition. It's going to be very, very hard. They're way ahead in terms of production, and they have ports, while I just have like 3 useless roads, and then I have another useless road bidding. It's not looking like a good spot, especially since I can't buy dev cards on my turn at least. Since right now I have 2/3 of a dev card, and that 2/3 involves me porting, forwarding my wood, which is really, really inconvenient for me.
Yeah, and fortunately, Black, I mean, obviously doesn't have a dev card right now. They have the 3 wood, 2 sheep, so they're missing 1 card. But yeah, it's pretty unlikely you'd be able to buy a dev card. I mean, yeah, if you rolled an ore 8/4/9, you'd be able to buy a dev card. Otherwise, Black for sure will be able to get a dev card on their next turn. It's obviously not a guarantee that Black would get a knight, but it basically is, because you've been buying dev cards and you're getting all of the non-knights. And when that happens, you know there's so many knights in the deck, and that you just have to hope Black doesn't pull a knight, but you know it's really likely they're going to.
Yes, it's like the more non-knight cards I draw, the higher chance that the more knights that my opponents will draw, since I'm drawing all the non-knight cards. And I need largest army. It's very, very critical. I was lucky enough to roll an 8 on my turn, so I do have a dev card in my turn, but it's a very, very, very expensive one.
Yeah, I think you have to do it though. I mean, even though the woods are rare, I mean, a knight does put you at 9 points, and then you just need to get a settlement down. So yeah, I think you have to forfeit 1 for the sheep, even though it seems like a bad idea to get rid of your wood. I mean, you need a knight, or if you don't get a knight here, I mean, I don't think you're going to win. Because Black for sure getting any rolls will be able to get a dev card.
Yes, exactly. And I think that other people are very, very afraid of me at the moment, since no monos have been played at all. And I've been having, and someone having 4 down dev cards look really, really scary. Even though a lot of those are passive cards. So I'd go ahead and,
yeah, I guess, yeah, I would have played the road building, and then, I mean, you look less scary, I guess.
Yes, exactly. I think that I was gonna just say that right there, since me not playing my road bidding just shows them like, oh, you have another down dev card. It looks very, very scary. But if I showed my opponents like, hey, listen, it's just another useless road bidding, they're like literally just useless, since I'm gonna just since it does nothing, it decreases the my scariness factor just by a little bit, if that makes sense. In addition to that, it's that if I do start buying knights in the future, then I can only play 1 dev card per turn, and because of that, that was one of the few turns that I didn't have a knight in hand that I needed to be playing. So I needed to be just playing the road bidding in that spot, just to show everyone, like, listen, what I have is not scary. But also because if I don't do it now, there's a strong chance in the future I won't be having the chance to be playing my road bidding. If I have to get in a large, exhausting night race with Black.
Yeah, which I guess that part doesn't matter, because you really don't need to play the road building at all. Like, it doesn't help you at all. Yeah, like you said, you do have the factor of it makes you look scary. But besides that, I mean, it's not going to help you, like, at all, essentially. So if you don't play it, it's really not, like, a big deal, I don't think.
So on my turn, I roll a 9, and now I realize that the mistake that I made last turn, that I could have played my road bidding, and I decided to do it this turn instead. Do you think there's merit to go ahead and play an aggressive knight at all?
I don't think so. I think you might want to save it. Since the knight puts you at 9, you do need to get that 10th point. I think you save it so if you get blocked, you're able to unblock yourself and maybe get the last roll you need to win the game. Since black, I guess you could block the 10 ore. I mean, just because there's the danger of, black being able to buy 2 development cards, and then even playing 1, I mean, he's going to be able to take army from you still. So you do have that risk, but I think it makes sense to hold it. Because, blue's scary too. They have 12 cards in their hand, can take road. So yeah, I guess I probably wouldn't have played it.
Yeah. I don't think there's any reason to play an aggressive knight, especially when you only have 1 knight yourself. I only like playing aggressive knights when you have multiple knights in storage. So I gave an ore to green for a brick. What do you think about that trade over there?
Yeah, I think in terms of your hand, it definitely makes sense. I mean, you can't build any more cities. You don't need another knight right now. You need a settlement. So you're hoping you roll a wheat, get in wheat and an ore roll, then you can 4 for 1 ore for the wood. So it makes sense. Then if you look at green, so they might have a VP hoping to, get another city to win the game. But green is kind of in a scary position. I mean, they do have the 4 ore there, where if they roll a 4, they could be close to being a city. But yeah, I guess I wasn't paying attention to what's in green's hand, but has to be cautious about them, possibly getting a city and winning the game. But if you know that they're just going to maybe pull a dev card for the win, it's pretty good odds that they're not going to get it based on that you have 3 of them already.
Yeah. So the reason why I did that trade, or I was very confident, and I wasn't very afraid of green in that spot, was because I was tracking blue's cards actually, and I knew that they had enough rolls or enough roads in hand since a 6 did roll, and they had a bunch of wooden bricks in hand. So I knew that even though if green's at 8 points with the dev card down, that me trading them an ore for the last point was playing with fire. But I was confident that blue was going to be able to take longest road in that in the turn orbit in the turn before green goes. So it's not as scary, and so green couldn't win. And blue, luckily, they did do that, and they did build the roads. So I was very, very happy about that. But orange over.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And blue's gonna take road, and you need the brick for settlement. Like I said, you're hoping for a wheat and an ore roll. You got that. So as long as you don't hit a 7, then the trade really worked out and would give you the win.
Yeah, for sure. But a 10 was rolled a little bit earlier. And now now black had 17 cards, and they would go on their turn. They went ahead and blocked 4 dev cards. But I do have 9 cards on my turn, and I decided to play the knight. And the reason why I decided to play my knight was because because black had wood, and if I can get a wood from black, then that guarantees me a settlement, even if I do roll a 7. And so right now I do have the win in hand, but if I roll a 7, then that destroys the win in my hand. I still have to pluck for a wood.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially if someone only has like 1 or 2 cards or 2 or 3 cards in their hand, you need to know one of them is something that'll help you out. I think it definitely makes sense. You want to play the knight before you roll, because if they were to roll, in this case, as long as you didn't roll 7, you would have won. But maybe in other scenarios, where if you didn't have the win on a 4 for 1, you needed the wood. If they had rolled a 10 or something, that would have been really hard to steal the wood. So yeah, I like playing aggressive knights like that when they only have 2 cards in their hand. At least one of them's a wood. Definitely a good play. But you didn't roll 7. I was able to 4 for 1, and it's definitely a good win, especially with your inability to draw knights, getting kind of those worthless row buildings. I think you managed the game well and played well to be able to end up with Army in that tough scenario with the unlucky dev card draws.
For sure. Lastly, what do you think are some lessons that we can learn from this game?
Well, I know this game happened before you just had the recent class on defensive settlements, and I think this is a perfect example of that. Like if you had taken, like black had a super strong setup and, easily could have won this game. But if you look at the 5-10-2, if you're taking that 5-10-2, like black goes from having a really good setup to like an absolute horrible setup. Like if he has to go on 6-5-12 or 6-4-11, and he's just on like wood, sheep, and ore, essentially. And they're going to have a really hard time. So I think since you're not really sacrificing that much on the 9-10-2, like I know you wanted, or the 5-10-2, like you wanted the sheep, but like I mentioned earlier, you get the wood port, and that essentially becomes a 5 sheep once you get the port. You take black out of the game completely just on the placements. I think that's big, and then because you spent all your time blocking black since you were fighting them for army. But if they're out of the game already, then you can focus on blue or green, whoever's in a good position to win. Obviously, blue is very close to winning. So if you're able to use your knights to block blue, you might have had an even easier road to victory. So I think this is a good example of the importance of defensive settlements, and if you're able to force your opponent onto a really poor position, that can be a huge difference maker.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Placing on the 2-9-10 was a huge mistake, since I could do the defensive settlement placement and go on the 2-5-10 and put black in a poor position. Well, Hawkeye, thank you so much for providing your insight.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully you'll include me in your future videos, and yeah, definitely a well played game by you, and congrats on the win.
Listen, Hawkeye, I will include you in my future videos. You don't have to worry about that. I gotta cut that shit out. Yeah.
All right.
Hopefully you include me in your future videos. You're like begging me. Yes, I will.
Anyways, y'all, if you want to see Hawkeye again, go ahead and like the video so I know that this is the type of content you want to see. Thank you so much for watching as always. I'm Dylighted, and I hope you learned something.